Good day. I am Fitzgerald EAS of BS Architecture 5P. I will be presenting my study titled as Musa, Calibrating Agrarian Reform Communities Through Social Innovation, presented this 7th of October of 2022 as part of the requirements of Architectural Design 9, thesis research writing of Ateneo de Davao University Architecture Department. The video is presented accordingly to understand the approach and concept of the study and its phenomena, its significance, and such. Agriculture is one of the most vital industries in any society, since it is the one and only that can provide food and cares for its citizens while simultaneously preserving the environment of the land and the country's well-being, according to Madayag and Estanislao. Mindanao, one of the country's wealthiest islands regarding natural resources, is devoted to farming. According to Business World, a third of its land concentrates on agriculture, and the island is responsible for about 33% of the country's agriculture and fishery sector. For several years, the industry has supported and fed millions of Filipino within the land and across the globe. Its top-producing crop, banana, is significant to the locals because it is a high-value crop product marketed internationally. An act instituting a comprehensive agrarian reform program to promote social justice and industrialization, providing the mechanism for its implementation and for other purposes. The Act supports agribusiness venture arrangements, which are local equivalent of contract farming. The integration of ARC is a holistic approach to addressing rural poverty incidents and achieving sustained growth and transformation among the agrarian reform beneficiaries, or ARC. The Social Reform Agenda, or SRA, defined the ARCs as interconnected zones where domestic and international agencies and entities should concentrate their resources, operations, and efforts. The establishment of at least one agrarian reform community was required in a legislative district under the Republic Act No. 7905 as an act to strengthen the implementation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. According to Nandi and Nodiraman, the sustainability of agriculture, which nevertheless plays a significant role in developing economies, is threatened by rising rural-urban displacement, an aging farming population, and a decline in the interest of rural youth in the sector. The reduction of Philippine agriculture befalls into three factors. The government has failed to safeguard the best interests of the local farmers in favor of globalization and commercialization. Farmers are being influenced strongly by employment opportunities in other industry sectors to consider taking, which has an impact on the number of people employed in the agricultural sector and consequently has an effect on its endpoints. And lastly, failure to use newer technologies to enhance the productivity under the sector to meet the changing demands of the country. How can social innovation be a driver or a channel for changes in agrarian reform communities? This is aided through the following research questions and objectives. How can system, mastery, and commitment dimensions contribute to effective social innovation in communities? Objectives is to analyze how the dimensions of systems, mastery, and commitment process an effective architecture for social innovation in communities, to examine the social innovation body of knowledge and to what it might contribute to community and agriculture, and to determine the significance and relevance of social innovation. For research question number 2, how are social, economic, and environmental factors present within the communities? And the objective is to examine at least one factor socially, economically, and environmentally to systems, mastery, and commitment dimensions. For research question number 3, how can communities cultivate social innovation within the community itself? The research objective is to identify the prevalence of systems, mastery, and commitment as an architecture for effective social innovation within the community frame, and to analyze the basic social structure of the community of scope, to analyze demographics and examine an individual's function in the architecture of effective social innovation. Last research question is how can social innovation be attributed to the spatial and built environment? To illustrate a framework that will serve as a backbone for community development, especially in terms of spaces and the built environment. To outline concepts of social innovation related to the built environment, to illustrate the results of the study and determine how they will be applied to spatial planning and architecture, and to analyze how it will impact the Sustainable Development Goals number 8, decent work and economic growth, Sustainable Development number 9, industry and innovation, and Sustainable Development Goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. The conceptual framework further shows variables and aspects the study analyzes, examines, and interprets, emanating firstly from the individual and its surrounding factors of influence, followed by the dimensions of effective social innovation and the broader visions of the Sustainable Development Goals. The theoretical framework demonstrates the approach to the study utilizing the concept of an architecture for effective social innovation, system mastery, and commitment by Christian Skilos of the Stanford Center of Philanthropy and Civil Society. In achieving a future with inclusive growth, the industry should focus on its communities where the source of production is focused. The power behind the system resides, its people. Thus, the assumption and hypothesis of the study assumes that social innovation can inculcate incubation platforms for the banana industry and contribute to spatial planning and communities built environment. Meanwhile, the hypotheses are as follows. Practical approach and structuring of social innovation suitable to the community can be attainable by exploring the dimensions of effective social innovation. Significantly, the concept of social innovation will only be feasible with the intervention of human actions collectively and individually. External, social, economic, and environmental factors also connect to the dimensions of effective social innovation, which moderate the capacity of an individual to participate, engage, and decide. Lastly, social innovation attributes to the spatial planning of the built environment and the spaces upon incubation and innovation. Underpinning the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations to address poverty in all forms, achieve inclusivity and address inequality, nature-based development solutions, efficient and responsive governance, resiliency, and sustainability. It is projected to be valuable to the following entities: the people, specifically of the chosen neighborhoods of the study alongside the communities. It will also strengthen the industry, adding a more and green inclusive path for the future. The planning professionals and academies, which would enlighten how these spaces are approached and designed accordingly. The scope and limitations of the study would be: first, the disciplines identified within the said vicinity are not limited to the following: banana growers, banana farm and plantation laborers, government and social workers, and lastly, the residents. It also includes the locale in which the study will focus and conducted on the agrarian reform communities of Barangay Dapco, Panabo City, Davao del Norte, precisely Farm 1, Farm 2, Farm 3, Homeland Subdivision, and Packing Plant 91. Literature gathered or identified is essential to the spine of the study in general. The review of related literature is thematically composed of three main motifs: communities, the agriculture and communities, and social innovation, alongside the Sustainable Development Goals and framework. For the community, literature is arranged with the topics of its background and a primer of what community is. The topics included in the background of the community are as follows: the banana industry in the Philippines, the banana industry in Davao Region, and the banana industry of Panabo City and the Barangay Dapco. It also includes a brief history of communities in the Philippines, communities in Davao Region, and the community of Barangay Dapco, Panabo City. For the agriculture and communities, the following literature was included. First, agrarian reform communities. Second, the challenges and threats of communities. Third, social and economic factors. And lastly, environmental factors. The following literature and topics was included in the social innovation section. First, social innovation as a concept, social innovation as a practice, social innovation as a process, social innovation in communities, and lastly, social innovation in the built environment. Additionally, the section included an architecture of effective social innovation literature. It includes the following sections of literature and topics. First, the dimension of systems. Second, the dimension of mastery. And lastly, the dimension of commitment. Additionally, the study included literature in cultivating a community of belonging, interaction, and innovation, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations and a framework of Ambisyon Natin 2040. Literature matrices for social innovation and communities are as follows. Social innovation systems for building resilient communities. The research proposes a lens of different channels to which the researcher in the profession of design and planning would be able to utilize in order to contribute to the study of social innovation. Moreover, the study further adapted diverse systems and frameworks that are generally feasible to develop and that can steer socially, economically, and environmentally resilient systems for communities in the future. Transformative social innovation for sustainable rural development, an analytical framework to assist community-based initiatives. The paper suggests that social innovation is a product of local dynamics and it highlights the importance of socially transformative actions through place-based and local context actions. This implies that the actors across a network are relevant to the building and making social innovation happen and be enacted. Social innovation in the built environment, the challenges presented by the politics of space. The study will set the parameters in relation to the previous study of social innovation as a response to social, economic, and environmental concerns through 9 case studies. The report examines the connections between the studies of sustainability and resilience in relation to the spatial and political sphere, with careful consideration of how social innovation in the built environment occurs over phases of network, framework, and architecture. Values, motivation, commitment, performance, and rewards analysis model. In this methodology, the geographical location is crucial for grasping the research. The work environment values the collaboration and pursuit of values shared by all individuals inside an organization. Values become critical to comprehending culture and assessing organizational success as a result. This way, the result of the study could be used as an analysis and approach to the social innovation study of the community, as it demonstrated the relationship of 2 variables to be used in the study, namely commitment and motivation. The chapter will introduce and discuss the methods utilized to attain research questions, goals, and objectives. The chapter also explains the approach and detailed process of conducting the study using the research design, instruments, and subjects to precisely arrive at analysis, interpretations, synthesis, and answers to the queries. The research design of the study utilized a descriptive method with the aid of triangulation method. The triangulation method, a mix of qualitative and quantitative method to collect data needed for the study. The research subjects of the study are found within the scope of Agrarian Reform Community of Barangay Dapco, Panabo City, Davao del Norte. It involved internal actors and disciplines as well as external ones. The process in which the study will take place is through the primary and secondary resources of the study, and the use of Sloven's formula determined the true to population sample size of the study. Moreover, a set of data gathering procedure alongside ethical considerations were implemented during the collection of data through surveys, focus group discussions, interviews, and ocular inspection. The composition of the study through the aid of research design of triangulation method have dissected important data, literature, and narrative for the study, thus constituting the following topics to be discussed afterwards. As recognized, social innovation as a concept is a social technology that can be calibrated according to the place-based context it adheres with. The concept's characteristics are homogeneous to the related literature that has been published. Social innovation also is manifested in the built environment. It encompasses manifestations such as place-specific contexts, socio-cultural elements, emphasis on function, institutions and sustainable development, cohesive and inclusive environment, governance and service-oriented, interface of the built and natural environment, and lastly, transparency and welfare systems. Relating to the definition of cultivation as the preparation of soil for raising crops by loosening and tilling up the land is executed for this to be achieved. Figuratively, the concept of this section is similar to the findings in which the literatures have concluded. By cultivating means assessing the resources of the environment. In this sense, on the agrarian reform communities of Panabo City, Davao del Norte, it's important to identify first social capital that is prevalent and existing in the locale. This section also synthesized a community sense of belonging, perception, and innovation, as it aimed to analyze the structure of social and physical elements of the community and how this may relate or be linked with social innovation. The following data were also collected and analyzed on where the individuals interact on the community and its frequency, as well as their comfort towards the barangay facilities and spaces such as the barangay hall, barangay gymnasium, and barangay health center, as well as their distance to the several mentioned key facilities within the barangay. Additionally, the respondents were also assessed on the spaces for their specific barangay level conflicts and functionality of a house to them. Top response from the community stipulated that it functions for them mainly as source of local crops and foods. It also functions for small or micro business storage for agricultural materials and stuff, functions as dwelling for office for remote works, and a space for practicing talent. Moreover, top answers for the spaces they rely for conflicts were the Purok leader's house, barangay hall, and close neighbor and relatives periphery. Analyzing the satellite map illustrates the distribution of farms or puroks within the Agrarian Reform Community of Barangay Dapco. From left to right is Farm 1, Farm 2, Farm 3, Packing Plant 91, and Homeland Subdivision are observed in linear directions respectively. The distribution of farming neighborhoods could be attributed to the distribution of farmers and laborers' economic farming. Additionally, at the center of each farm are plantations for banana processing alongside its supplementary and supporting facilities. Findings have developed aspects to which an effective social innovation can be taken in the community and agriculture, as well as in terms of the field of architecture and community planning and the built environment. Through commitment, social activity and action could be anticipated despite the person's fluctuating goals and interests. Moreover, commitment orients someone to uphold the best interest. It has shown that an organizational or communal culture is recognized as a determinant of people's openness to change and commitment. Understanding the emergence of motivation as an aspect between the dimensions of commitment and systems indicates that between the dimensions of commitment and mastery, there is ambition. The degree ambition plays a critical role in the instructional process, given that it is an indication as to how people interact with their environment, community, and society. In this sense, impact are denoted with the meanings and definitions of influence. It marks a specific change from the cause and effect, and the effects are attributed from the factors of environment that may cause such changes and influence. Social innovation needs to have a facilitative space where it can encourage multi-participatory actions and interactions from the actors of the community. These facilitative spaces can be in form of formal or informal settings. The following surveys were gathered to determine the people's perception on willingness and readiness for collaborative efforts within the community. Results also view their perception of peace and order within and the unity of purok and farms within. Answers also from focus group discussions mainly synthesize lack of limited interactions due to the distance of each farms, but cohesive because of the communal source of living. Generally, for the socio-economic factors, the lack of support by higher entities based on focus group discussions was the reason of loss and mismanagement of banana production alongside the widespread impact of banana diseases. These factors affect the community directly. Also, an anticipated impact of changes in weather conditions and patterns due to climate change. Monoculture farming also results in the demise of biodiversity in the area, destroying the existing ecosystem. Also, the application and practices of agrochemicals in a monoculture farm pollutes natural resources such as water, soil, and health of the farmers and laborers. Based on the results of the survey, respondents' perception of comfort at home in terms of floor area, indoor atmosphere, and quality interpreted through the Likert scale resulted that 32.7% of the respondents were comfortable, while 30.6% of the respondents answered 3, interpreted as neutrality on their perception. When asked about the possible factors affecting their comfortability at home, top response was the thermal comfort at home, equivalent to 76.5%, followed by the safety and security of the house and the quality and the integrity of house itself. Based also on the results, if there are facilities and spaces for top-down financial assistance and support, alongside multi-purpose facility for bottom-up communal support and enhancement, as well as top-down agricultural assistance and support spaces, majority of the responses dominantly answered yes. In terms of facilities needed within the barangay, answers from the respondents were high and the responses are as follows. Communal spaces for business and enterprise, and farmers market, multi-purpose gym and facilities, a community center, and an agriculture research lab and facility. Careful solutions offered to the communal spaces of the agrarian reform community is focused on the social capital of the community. Therefore, the following elements are recommended in the spaces of the community with focus on their relations and collective values as well as identity. These have led to a guideline of a community that have the elements of belonging and interaction such as openness, social mix, especially for the vulnerable groups, and integrated land mix used to inculcate possibilities for the community and the industry. Manifested primarily also on the spaces of the community are the elements and attributes of innovation that is open-ended, modifiable, smart, integrated with visual quality for dwelling, as well as value reflecting. Architectural recommendations such as openness of public and civic spaces to facilitate interactions and sense of place for the community. This entails an accessibility to all spaces and facilities within the allocated and designated public realm, such as the spaces of plazas and the paroks and the streets or cantos, with provisions for seatings and relaxation, as well as sociocultural activities and practices. A space that demonstrates peace and order, warranting personal obligation for cleanliness, civic orderliness, and proper conduct. To access interaction, the space must be positioned in advantageous location and zone and facilitates access in all forms of public transportation. Additionally, it should be planned with the ability to adapt and promote resilience, while integrated in the promotion of community and environment initiatives. Social mix through the inclusive design, it entices people to participate and engage on the environment and thus enjoy the practice of the community. This also entails a design that is flexible to the variety of users, especially on the vulnerable groups, a person with disability or PWD, old age group and children, cultural minorities, as well as gender inclusivity. This fosters an environment of equality and thus belongingness. Integrated and mixed land use is to encourage interactions of citizens and users through compact and efficient integrated designs such as zones of commercial, administrative, residential, industrial, and green zone. Additionally, from the urban's identity, it can be integrated through strategic planning of districts while anticipating densities and environmental attributes. For the architectural recommendations and social factors, it is suggested to have a place-specific elements and attributes such as the agrarian facilities and networks, poroks and cantos, which are vital for interaction, and other facilities for socialization as presented. A neighborhood with emphasis to integrating urban design and community layout centered on pedestrian mobilization, an integrated design that provides compact and mixed functional spaces that revolves around agriculture and farming, as well as socialization spaces primarily off the streets of the neighborhoods, poroks, where gulayan are situated. It also entices dedicated spaces for formal and informal meeting places such as the streets, canto, porok, and barangay hall that is purposefully designed with qualities for inclusive and diverse individual within the community, to sustain people's well-being through interactions and casual conversations. This also reflects into an enhanced ARP or Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries output and income, security for basic requirements, independence and ownership over land and other productive resources, and eventually a higher standard of living for the households. A community-driven development or CDD in support of place and site dynamics, establishing a facility of Barangay Agrarian Reform Council or BARC are key and essential to social innovation processes of the community. Strategically positioning the community into several ARC clusters is the purpose of agriculture and enterprise development output to provide strategic support services to participating ARCs and ARC clusters to generate sustained increases in agricultural production and productivity, to increase economic activities and value added in the target areas, and to pilot ARC connectivity strategies supported by SILCAP. Design for economic resiliency and sustained livelihood, social governance spaces to foster and support ARB or agrarian reform beneficiaries, management of their farms, integration of available technological platforms for formal and informal, tailoring a cohesive neighborhood instead of clusters, a multi-purpose nodes and cooperatives for agricultural livelihood, and continued education and support from local and external actors in accordance with spatial and place space dynamics that can reproduce open arena for public opportunities and multi-participatory collaboration, a node channel of basic facilities that can support and provide assistance to manifest aspirations, solutions, and ideas, inclusive, open, and sustainable in the factors of socio-economic and environmental aspects. A climate adaptive design for human dwellings and community in general, which is often observed in the household members' comfortability. Application of place-based innovations, passive and vernacular design strategies for sustained living conditions while mitigating the hazards and risks affecting primarily agricultural lands, economic and social zones. Adoption of diverse plant materials across community peripheries. Prescriptive cultivation of native plant materials to foster ecological balance within the public and private realms, as well as the cultivation of crops responsive to season change sufficient to living of the neighborhood demand. Holistic practice and strategies in the organic production of fertilizer and significant facilities of neighborhood, which promotes and improves the agroeconomic health system, including biodiversity, biological cycles, and the soil biological activity, taking into account that regional conditions require locally adaptive systems, which is achieved by using, when possible, cultural, biological, and mechanical methods as opposed to synthetic inputs. Findings for concept of social innovation is a channel that processes through socially creative strategies emerged from the catalyst or the actors. So the architectural recommendations is an interactive expression and communication for the host and actors or the residents themselves. An interactive environment is mutual and reciprocal. It is interactive. And finally, it is resilient, which refers to the ability of cities to incorporate various features of urbanization, sustainability development, and environmental impacts. For the enhancement of capacity of the individual and group, the social ecosystem attributed as a space for the actors, social entrepreneurs are infused and ideas are disseminated. For this, the environment of these spaces are where relationships of communities are emphasized and manifested in terms of the aspirations of the context. So an inclusive characteristic among the process, approaches, and progress of the concept may undertake. This implies unboundedness and sociable science of the spaces and environment they dwell. For systems where it is denoted as the meanings and definitions of influence, a socially innovative space dedicated for communal interactions and ideation is integrated into everyday normal practice and spaces of the communities and the experience and dynamics of individual and the spaces where they dwell. For the mastery, adaptive and modifiable stress-free environment focusing on the configuration, progressive course, and the general shifting conditions of human being, and the physical space and environment conditioned for human dwellings, social interactions, as well as organizational and institutional support. For commitment is the integration of culture and organizational elements and spatial dynamics into the spaces results to the adaptation and resurgence of motives of human being. Territorially embedded environment dedicated for social space and external actor to co-emerge and develop strategies as well as casually socialize and interact. The following sections were taken as a ground for the previous architectural recommendations. More of the thematic concepts applicable are inclusivity for the spaces, as it highlights interactions and mutual environment presented in the table below. Thus, with a set of following recommendations, a narrowed outline of 3 major zones for the development are identified. First, communal facilities and development. Second, agriculture and enterprise. And lastly, government suburban infrastructure such as roads and bridges. The classification and general requirements of all buildings by use or occupancy is based on the National Building Code. The site is situated approximately 15 kilometers from the urban center of Panabo City, Davao del Norte. The different sites were comparatively analyzed through highest and best used method. The chosen site, which is Site B, poses average proximity to critical institutional facilities and schools within the community, as well as several agrarian reform cooperatives and industrial packing corporation. Based also on the analysis of hazards and risks, it's not susceptible to any major hazards such as flooding and storm surge. Area is accessible through Tagum Panabo Circumferential Road and Santo Tomas Carmen Road with typical fast traffic observed in the area. It also has a linkage of the neighborhoods within the Dapco Barangay Road. The site is conceptually zoned for specific land use of the development, mainly residential for the agrarian reform communities along its basic facilities. Moreover, the agri-industrial facilities for processing, nurturing, education, research, and development are provided. While on the major road, the communal and agri-enterprise zone is situated for robust growth and opportunity. Additionally, the site is specifically allocated for networks of access wherein people are able to socialize and interact safely. The study, which is a channel to alleviate the challenges experienced by the community, generally will befall into a social innovation, which will not only transform the relationship among the individuals, but also how they will interact. Merits of the study, specifically motivation and commitment, will help professionals understand and sympathize more with these agricultural-based communities. Moreover, as a channel, it is expected that the study will help achieve decent work and inclusive growth of the economy. It will also channel a sustainable approach of systems and planning of the industry, premise of innovation and the digital age and technologies. And it will greatly impact the communities, its spatial, built, and natural environment.